Well, I want to talk about that, but I do just want to ask, first of all, about what the Prime Minister and indeed others in the international community have said. Is this a time for Israel to show restraint?
No, it's a time to Israel to protect its citizens.
I want to talk to you about
any sovereign country.
Do you think
any sovereign country would have defended its citizens?
As the United Nations says, moving towards all-out war?
United Nations, its duty to say that Hamas is committing a double war crimes.
As you well know, the United Nations has repeatedly said that the settlements are illegal in international law and should cease, and those are continuing. But to say the United Nations should do something when Israel is ignoring what the United Nations has said in the context of settlements.
Can I ask you something? What would you do if Britain was under a fire? What would you do if London was under fire and rockets were thrown on your house? What would you do? Do you think Britain would have sit silent, not protecting its citizens? Do you expect any sovereign country not to protect its citizens?
Of course you can protect citizens. The question is the retaliation and the attacking of civilians in Gaza and elsewhere, which, as we know, once again is leading to disproportionate suffering on the Palestinian side.
Whenever you're under a war with a terror organization, you can shoot to the targets in order to destroy the facilities of this terror organization. This is what Israel has been doing for the last 2 days in order to protect our citizens.
Even if it results in significant civilian casualties.
We're doing everything in our power not to harm children.
But if you stop the attacks...
But we need to protect the Israeli children as well. You need to understand.
Yeah, but if you stop the attacks, you wouldn't be killing Palestinian children.
So you expect us just to have fire on our cities, on our children, and do nothing? Do you expect that from a sovereign nation, not to protect its citizens? This is what you're basically saying.
I say people who've been victim of terror attacks, countries who've been victim of terror attacks, do not always respond in the way that Israel's responding. I'm asking you, on behalf of the Israeli government, would you accept that there was overreaction and indeed brutality by the Israeli police?
Absolutely not. No, in a way. Actually, some people say we're being too gentle. Some people say we're being too gentle. As long as our cities are still under fire, we're being probably too gentle.
But as a diplomat, you're not really offering much diplomacy, are you? We heard angry words from the President Abbas there saying America and Israel should go away. What does he mean by that?
Well, it's been far too long, Adam, that people have been subjected to a very concerted, constant campaign of simple denial of their rights. Of subjugation, of besiegement, of ethnic cleansing, of displacement and placement.
But I mean,
people are tired, and the president is representing his people.
Yeah, but Israel go away sounds like you're saying there shouldn't be a Jewish state.
Okay, but let's not get there, Adam.
That's not what he meant.
No. What we meant, Israel must end its occupation. It must end its discrimination and racism. Israel must behave, if it wants to be a state within the international system, according to international rules. And Israel, since its inception, did not. And it has been violating every single rule.
Right. Yeah. Do you support the firing of missiles into Israel?
And there is a fireball now, and innocent people are being affected.
Yeah, I understand. But do you support the firing of missiles?
The heartbreaking images that came from Gaza. But who started the fire? That's the question.
No.
And every time, we come back to Sky and other news outlets and we discuss this.
Yeah, but the question...
And we discuss... You want to discuss the reaction?
No. And Israel is saying it's retaliating, and that if those missile exchanges, rocket exchanges stop, that it would stop the bombing.
But do you think stopping the exchanges would stop the ugly reality that started this whole thing?
Well, it would stop people dying and being blown up.
No, Palestinians are dying every day, with exchanges or not. Diplomacy need not just to put off fire. They need to revisit why fire started, because this has been happening. Every couple of months you invite us because people are dying. We need to, that's why my president yesterday said, enough is enough. Get off our backs. So this is an opportunity, Adam. This is an opportunity not to have all these people who...
So how do we practically, with a new American administration and all the rest of it, how do we practically get to a situation where this violence stops and where the grievances which you've outlined can be addressed again by the international community?
Very simple. Israel must leave us alone. Just get off our backs. Leave the occupied territories. Occupation, military occupation, is by definition temporary. You cannot have a military occupation
Right.
for 54 years, let alone if you use this military occupation to actually displace and replace people as you have been doing.
But
What is happening, Adam? Sorry. For all these years, the Palestinian people have been subjected to a system of ethnic cleansing. Now we're done with that. So the issue is not just exchanges.
Right.
The world need to come and help us. What do we do with opposing? Did the international community do its own responsibility to actually stop Israel from doing that? Did Britain really take up its historic and moral responsibility? You know, it all started here 100 years ago.
Well, we can get
it
back
was
to the
your
Balfour
country, Adam.
Declaration and all the rest
No.
of it.
It's important to remind the
Sure,
British audience and the international audience, the United Kingdom, with that moral arrogance, promised our land for another people without even consulting us. And since then, we have been in an ongoing agony.
But I do want
this position.
I'm about to speak to a United Nations diplomat.
And that's why the UK
And I want to ask you what diplomatic moves you want to see happen now.
Firefighting is important. We need firefighters now to put off the fire. But we need law enforcement. We need the international community to enforce its own laws, Adam. We need the international community to come and tell Israel, listen, there are consequences to illegalities.
Okay.
We have established this system, the international system, so we don't go back to the horrors of the Second World War. We will not allow Israel, that's what the UK should be saying, and the world, to be above the law. The culture of impunity must end. If the world starts really behaving like law enforcement, if Israel becomes under the law and not above it, I assure you, peace will be within reach.